In our last video, I risked life and limb, or really a secondhand GoPro and some waterproof lights, to discover what happens inside a dishwasher and what that means for how you should use the thing. But there's a big looming question that we didn't actually tackle in that video. Should you even use a dishwasher in the first place? Like, does this thing actually wash dishes as well as an attentive human can by hand? And how much water and energy does it use compared to hand washing dishes? In other words, is it better to just do the job yourself? This is Minute Food. Here in the US, 1 out of every 5 households that has a dishwasher doesn't actually use it, often because they think it's either ineffective or wasteful. We got tons of comments on our last video from folks like these. And while chatting with the Minute team, I found out that one of our own is a dishwasher disbeliever. So in my quest to better understand dishwashers, I decided I had to pin down where these things stand as far as effectiveness and efficiency. First though, it's necessary to have some sense of what happens in here. And by in here, I'm talking about inside a relatively modern dishwasher. Anything manufactured in the last 10 years or so. If you want to know the nitty-gritty details, or just want to revel in the strangely captivating footage, you should watch our previous video. But basically, modern dishwashers work by filling with a relatively small amount of water, usually about 1 gallon to 1.5 gallons. Then pumping that water through spinny things called spray arms, over and over and over before the water is drained. This process of filling, spraying, and draining happens multiple times during a cycle, usually once during the pre-wash, once during the main wash, this is when the detergent pops out and dissolves into the water to actually wash your dishes, and a few times during the rinse part of the cycle. You can choose whether, after washing, to let the residual heat from the rinse water dry your dishes, or use a heat dry option that helps turn any remaining moisture to steam. Okay, so can a dishwasher, which is basically a glorified dish shower, really get your dishes as clean as washing them by hand? The research on this is crystal clear. Dishwashers get dishes much cleaner than hand washing does, at least the way most people hand wash dishes. One study compared the amount of bacteria left on hand-washed and dishwasher-washed dishes. The researchers found that every single plate, mug, and glass that had gone through the dishwasher more than met the US health standard of 100 or fewer bacterial colonies. In fact, most had no bacteria on them at all. Only 1 fork fell short. But when it came to hand-washed dishes, 20% of plates, 53% of mugs, 30% of glasses, and 20% of forks failed those same safety standards. Yikes. Most other studies have come to basically the same finding. As far as cleaning performance, dishwashers consistently beat people. There are basically 2 things going on here. The first is that on a normal day-to-day basis, people aren't actually very good at washing dishes. And the second is that dishwashers are. Hand washing seems effective. You're washing dishes one at a time and individually assessing how dirty they are and when they get clean. But we're not all that good at making these judgments. Like, a water glass might look sparkling clean pretty quickly, but we can't actually see the germs that may still be lurking on it. There's also the issue of water temperature, which actually does most of the heavy lifting as far as killing disease-causing stuff on your dishes. It isn't until above about 60 degrees Celsius, 140 Fahrenheit, that water can kill germs relatively quickly. But water that hot can burn your hands in a matter of seconds. In other words, people generally don't wash dishes in water hot enough to actually sanitize them. Then there are the standard tools of the hand-washing trade: sponges, dish towels, and dish mats, which tend to hold onto and spread bacteria. And finally, there's the matter of humanness. We're often distracted, short on time, or just lazy. Dishwashers, on the other hand, are always up for the job. They spray dishes with high-pressure water that's way hotter than what's comfortable for us mere mortals. And they basically have all the time in the world. Many dishwashers have normal cycles that run for 2 hours or more. That is hours of high-pressure, super hot, detergent-y water really going at your dishes, removing gunk and killing germs. Put simply, modern dishwashers are optimized to clean dishes in a way that modern humans aren't. But effectiveness is only one part of the equation we're interested in. And if dishwashers are engineered for maximum cleaning power, they can't possibly be very efficient, right? Researchers have run the numbers here several times. One quick note, pretty much all appliance experts advise against pre-rinsing dishes before putting them in the dishwasher, because it's generally unnecessary and a huge waste of water. You can check out our previous video for more, but the point here is that the water usage numbers we're about to look at don't include pre-rinsing. Okay, so during a normal cycle, most modern dishwashers use about 4 gallons of water to wash up to 12 place settings of dishes, what dishwasher makers generally consider a full load. The newest dishwashers use even less. Dishwashers use so little water because they are repeatedly pumping small amounts of water around and around and around. When hand washing the same amount of dishes, people use an average of about 28 gallons of water. I mean, it's not even close. There is a lot of variation in how much water people use. In one study, there was an almost 15-fold difference between the lowest and highest water users. But even the most water-wise hand washer used twice as much water as an average dishwasher. Also, of course, not everyone runs a full load all the time. I am definitely not washing a 12-place setting each time I use my dishwasher. Obviously, running a load of just 1 or 2 dishes isn't an efficient choice. But the exact tipping point, in other words, how full a load needs to be before a dishwasher becomes the better choice, basically depends on how much water you're going to use to wash those dishes. A good rule of thumb is that, at least in the US, most kitchen taps run between 1 and 2 gallons per minute. So unless your tap is going to be running for less than 4 minutes total while you hand wash those dishes, and that's assuming you're not even running your faucet full blast, it's probably more water-wise to just run those dishes through the dishwasher. Okay, but what about energy use? I assumed this wouldn't even be close. Running a major appliance for a few hours must take more energy, but it turns out that the actual running of the dishwasher, like powering the motor and electronics, requires very little energy. The real power-hogging job is heating the water enough to clean the dishes relatively quickly. This, by the way, is why eco-friendly dishwasher cycles take so long. These cycles save energy by heating the water less, but running for much longer. Hand washing dishes doesn't require any extra energy in addition to what it takes to heat the water. But remember, hand washing generally uses much more hot water than a dishwasher does. As a result, most calculations find that it also uses significantly more energy than a dishwasher does. I am not saying that everyone should own a dishwasher, or that everyone who does own a dishwasher should use it all the time. There are perfectly valid reasons not to own or use a dishwasher. If you want to become a super effective, super efficient hand washer of dishes, check out the description, where I've put some great evidence-based references. But the research does show that in general, dishwashers beat out hand washing when it comes to cleaning dishes and conserving water and energy. And thanks to improving technology, they're only getting better. So if you are one of those people that owns but doesn't use a dishwasher, consider taking it for a spin. You might just be bowled over by the results. Speaking of cleaning, well, there's no way to make a clean transition here. We have finally got Minute Food merch. We want to make cool stuff that we would be excited to have, and hopefully you'll be as excited as we are. Right now in our new merch store, we've got a non-stick Pan Fan Gang t-shirt and an I Got These Guns from Lifting My Cast Iron Pan t-shirt. So you can show your love for pans that aren't non-stick and for the biceps they've given you in return. You probably saw them briefly in this video. I think they look pretty pantastic. Also, look at these cute little veggies. They all come from the same species of plant, and now they also come from the same sticker sheet. Gorgeous babies. You can get all these works of art over at dftba.com/minutefood or in the link in the description. To celebrate, we are offering 20% off your first purchase until July 1st using the discount code MINUTEFOOD at checkout. All right, thank you.